Good morning. Good morning, my beautiful friends. Happy awesome Saturday to you. It is indeed awesome Saturday. I want to say thank you guys so much for being here. Good morning, Shauna. Happy ass to you. It's time to get some ass at the awesome Saturday service. Hey there, Susan, coming in from Thailand. Super cool. We are way international today. I'm glad it's been really fun to watch your adventures, Susan. So I hope that you are having a great time over there in Thailand. And joining up, yeah, Tony is here from Florida. Hello, Tony. Wonderful to see you also. Let's see. It's about your bedtime. I'm sure it is, Susan. I'm sure you've had a really, really full day. Anyways, so happy awesome Saturday, everybody. Saturday is indeed awesome. This is the day that this is the Sabbath. This is the day of rest. This is the day when we stop focusing on doing and we start focusing on being. And the topic that I prepared today is a topic called or the title today, I guess, is true religion. And true religion is really all about returning to the core of faith. And so we're gonna talk about religion today. We're gonna talk about some world religions, which I think is going to be particularly pertinent. I'm sure that you have. I'm sure you've been to a lot of different temples, Susan, and some things that typically Westerners are just don't really ever see. But but yeah, the topic today is about true religion, and the first thing I just want to say is that every religion always begins with a core message, and that core message, I believe it, Susan. I believe it's a really spiritual place. Um, but the core message of every religion is a message of love. It's a message of unity. It's a message of spiritual transformation. The spiritual leaders are attempting to help the practitioners to live better lives in an eminently practical way. And over time, over time, religious practitioners start to argue over the details of the religion. The Bible contains 66 books. The commentary to the Bible, and there are hundreds of commentaries to the Bible, contain thousands of books. The the Torah is a fairly short series of books. The Talmud, which is the commentary on the Torah, is 1,700 pages long and encompasses like 15 volumes. The fact is that when future people come, spiritual leaders pen a religion and pen religious works, and then the people who follow them add to that tremendously. Just add and add and add and add and add. And so the oftentimes the commentaries on a work or on a religious work are far more voluminous than the religious work itself. Which in these commentaries, what are people doing except debating? It's folks who are debating the finer points of the religion. And so these debates overshadow the core message, the core message of love, of unity, of transformation, of personal growth, of loving your neighbor, is overshadowed by the minutia of these debates as people who passionately believe one thing or another about the religion argue with each other about it. And so the consequence of this, and this is the national. There you go, Susan. Thank you. I figured you'd know more about the Talmud than me. 37 volumes, 7.5 years of study. Yeah, I believe it. I There was a time in my life when I was like, I'm going to collect all the various important religious texts. I still don't have a copy of the Talmud. I just have not wanted to put out the $3,500 necessary to buy a copy of the Talmud. It's not. I have a PDF copy. I got it on the internet. Um, but I have a copy of quite a few other religious texts that were $29.99 on Amazon. Um, but anyways, the fact is that religion ultimately shifts from a spiritual path that exists for the benefit of its practitioners to a set of rigid rules, rules that are often used for power and control, which is the primary issue that non-religious people have about religion. Is that religions are have been co-opted by bad actors for the purpose of power and control. And there is an incredible danger that comes from losing sight of the essentials in a religion. So, for example, one of the well, one of the debates in Christianity that I always thought was particularly silly was as Christians debate the fate of unbaptized infants. See, there are some Christians who believe that once you get baptized, aka you go for a special bath and you get a special kind of dunking by a very special person, a priest, that your soul is saved and you're going to go to heaven. But before you get baptized, your soul's not saved and you're not going to go to heaven. I remember that I remember that I dropped into a Baptist service once. I was in rural Texas and I just didn't have anything to do, and it was a Sunday, and I was like, I'm just going to go to this local Baptist church where it was very obvious that my wife and I were the only two people who did not go there every single week. And I remember that when we walked in there, this being a Baptist church, the pastor stopped with his notes and just put down his sermon and decided instead to preach a sermon about baptism, about how if you don't get baptized literally right now, you're going to go to hell. And how if he doesn't baptize you, that it's his moral imperative to baptize you literally right now. Otherwise, you're going to go to hell. And he has a baptizing thing right here and it's full of water and you can just not go to hell right now. This sermon was being preached directly at my wife and I as we were in it. And I just looked at her. I was like, I'm pretty sure that this guy just wants to baptize us right now so that he can no longer be afraid that we're going to go to hell. This guy has abandoned his entire flock, this whole group of people who were here, who were here to hear his sermon because we showed up. And all of a sudden his sermon became about baptizing us because of his belief, because of his egotistical belief that he needs to baptize us in order to be absolutely 100% sure that we're not going to go to hell in accordance with his religious belief. My goodness, that was an awkward church service. We didn't end up getting baptized by that guy that day, but it was awkward as hell, let me tell you. So anyways, I mean, this was just one of the things that is just so important to certain sects of Christianity. And consequent one of the other debates that just rages in Christianity is about the fate of unbaptized infants. At what age do we become accountable for original sin? So if an infant is to die, are they going to go to hell if they haven't said that very special sinner's prayer that Christians believe that you have to say in order to not go to hell? And in the end, these debates about this overshadow the command that Jesus said to love each other, to love one another. The important part of Christianity, love one another, has been overshadowed by the not important part of Christianity, which is what happens to unbaptized infants. That does not freaking matter. They're all, these unbaptized infants who die being unbaptized are dead, whether you argue about it or not. This is not just relegated to Christianity. I mean, Susan, you're over in Thailand right now. I mean, Buddhists debate metaphysical doctrines over and over. In particular, there are two competing versions of Buddhism, and the first one, and you might have actually heard these since you're over there, but the Theravada and the Mahayana Buddhism traditions emphasize different things. So Theravada emphasizes personal enlightenment. Like the whole point of Buddhism is to become personally enlightened, and that's I think it's called Arhatship. I think it's been a little while since I've studied Buddhism, but anyway, but personal enlightenment. And the Mahayana tradition promotes the Bodhisattva ideal, which is delaying enlightenment to help other people achieve personal enlightenment. So other people aren't, if you're familiar with Buddhism at all, you're kind of like stuck in this endless loop of death and rebirth. And every time that you're reborn, you become a little bit more enlightened. But there are some people who say, well, enlightenment is the goal, and other people say, well, enlightenment there's something beyond being enlightened, which is delaying your own enlightenment intentionally, being so enlightened that you delay your own enlightenment in order to help other people become more enlightened. And this is a debate that rages and separates the Buddhist sects that you are currently touring their temples, Susan. Like you're there. You are steeped in that religious tradition literally right now. And yet there are folks who are, in that religious tradition, who are arguing about the minutia of, well, is it more enlightened to be enlightened, or is it more enlightened to enlighten other people instead of just, loving other people around them? And so there comes a time when religious rules become more important than morality. I mean, the probably the most famous ones in Christianity would be the Crusades. So people go and kill in the name of Jesus. They're like, oh well, we're going to go and liberate the Holy Land from those dirty Muslims. And so they directly contradict the teachings of Jesus, which is to love your neighbor as yourself. Instead, they go and kill in the name of Jesus. They go murder some Muslims and intentionally send them to hell because they're trying to get people to go to heaven. It makes no sense. The Crusades made no sense. In the Inquisition, another very famous one. This one specifically really related to Catholicism, but in the Inquisition, people got tortured in order to save their souls. Well, people get kidnapped and then accused of not being Christian enough, or not being Catholic enough, or accused of being pagan in some way. And so inquisitors, in the general interest of saving their souls, would torture them to death. In what way is this loving your neighbor? It is rightly condemned by all thinking people. And in the end, the Crusades did not bring any merit to Christianity, and the Inquisition did not bring any merit to Catholicism. In fact, all it did was provide ammunition for the detractors of these religions to point at them and be like, yeah, but you did that. Like, are you really, is your religion any good? Like, you torture and kill people in the name of your God. I know, once again, Susan, you're over there in the East. I know Hinduism is not as big in Thailand as Buddhism is, but Hinduism has the caste system, and the caste system is a social hierarchy that is justified by a religious interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "I am equally present in all beings. There is no one especially hateful or dear to me." That's the Bhagavad Gita 9:29. And yet people use the Bhagavad Gita to justify a social hierarchy where some people are better than other people. Krishna says that all people that Krishna is equally present in all beings, and yet people use the Bhagavad Gita to justify having some people be better than others. And not just that, but also they're in Hinduism, there are also the Dalits, the untouchables. The Dalits are denied access to temples. They're denied access to religion. They're denied access to education. They're denied access to clean water. They're denied access to the most basic elements of life. How does this jive with the Hindu belief in core unity? How can you quote Krishna and say, "I am equally present in all beings. There is no one especially hateful or dear to me," and also have the idea in your head that there are some people who shouldn't have education or clean water? How can people justify this? And yet, when religious laws or rules become more important than loving our neighbor, then this is exactly what happens. Let's talk about a bit more of an example that you have probably heard about in history. They wrote a song about this guy, Henry VIII. Ever heard of Henry VIII? So Henry VIII was absolutely obsessed with religious dogma. Henry VIII believed that if he broke religious rules, that he would end up in hell, and he did not want to end up in hell. He was very afraid of the fires of hell. And so instead of divorcing his wives when a new hot young thing came along, and Henry VIII had a lot of new hot young things come along in his life, and he was the king, so he could have access. That guy wanted some sexual variety in his life. So instead of just cheating on his wife like all the other kings did, instead of doing that, he just had two of them killed. And because he was, because he was the king, having his wives killed in his mind was not immoral. He could have anybody executed. He was the king. He had divine right to do that. Well, that didn't stop his two wives from being dead. That didn't stop, that didn't stop them from being killed extrajudiciously. The fact that it was legal to kill them does not mean it was moral or ethical to kill them just because he wanted to go date some new hot young thing, which is exactly what he did. He killed them and then he dated somebody younger and hotter instead of just, cheating on them like every other king had done, because he was worried that if he cheated on them that he would go to hell. But he wasn't worried that if he killed them he would go to hell, because it was legal to kill them, so therefore okay. Not only that, but when Pope Clement VII finally got sick of his shit and decided to stop granting him annulments of his marriages, because that's the original way that he did it. He would get married and then he would have the Pope annul the marriage so that as if in the eyes of God it never happened, and then he would marry somebody else. And then he would have the Pope annul the marriage and then he'd marry somebody else. And then eventually the Pope decided to stop doing it. And also the Pope decided to condemn him for, murdering his wives. And so he decided that the best thing for him to do was to create the Church of England, which still exists to this very day, which is basically like Catholics, but without the Pope. So the Church of England was created not because of spiritual enlightenment, but because of personal convenience. It was personally convenient for him to control the church that allowed him to annul his weddings so that he could continue to have sex with whoever he wanted to have sex with, instead of just, having a girlfriend and a wife the way that most kings typically do it. So the religion wasn't formed out of devotion to God. It was formed out of a king's desire for control and power. And once again, religious rules become way more important than morality. Is it more important to be faithful to your wife, or is it more important to have your religion say that it's okay for you to annul your marriage? So when religion becomes more about rules than righteousness, it starts to really go astray. And so how do we know what true religion is? I mean, if your religion creates more confusion than clarity, then it's time to return to the foundation of your religion. And if your religion makes you cruel to other people, then your religion has been hijacked by people who seek power rather than truth, by people who believe that by using your religious beliefs, they can get you to do things that are beneficial to them. And so a simple question to ask about any religion, particularly the one that you practice and the one that I practice, is, does this religious teaching return me to love? Does it take me closer to love? Does this teaching, and does the way that I'm applying this teaching in my life, does this bring me closer to love? I mean, a true religion is love, and there's let's talk about quite a few of them. So, in the Old Testament, and this is a very important thing. So, in the Old Testament, in Leviticus, the teaching is, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. So not only is it a command, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, but also God uses God's name to seal that command. You shall love your neighbor as yourself, period. I am the Lord, period. Leviticus 19:18. God didn't just put the love your neighbor as yourself on the Ten Commandments. God also added God's own name, I am, to that commandment to really, really drive home the point that God is present in your neighbor and also in you. Jesus quoted it in the New Testament to let all the folks who followed Jesus also be reminded. Jesus said, "Love your neighbor as yourself." Let's get away from Abrahamic religions for a moment and go over to the East, because that's where Susan is. The Buddha says, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule, which if in Western tradition, you could probably phrase that as to treat other people you want to be treated. Muhammad says, the best among you are those who have the best manners and character. The fact is that every true spiritual tradition leads back to love and unity, and far away from rules, and over to the idea of this, treating our neighbor the way that we would like to be treated. So today, I challenge you to evaluate your own faith. Is your faith making you more loving, or is your faith making you more judgmental? Is your faith bringing you closer to other people, or is it driving you away? Are there ideas that you have inside of your head that are causing you to live in discord with the folks around you? Or are the ideas in your head, which are typically informed by religion, causing you to have love and compassion and caring and forgiveness for the people around you? The fact is that all of us have a religion, whether we claim to or not, and whether we have words around it or not. And in the end, the way that we treat other people becomes our religion. And so, when in doubt, let's return to the simple truth that love is the highest law. The path to God isn't found in theological debates. It's not found in nitpicking the little, like, oh, should you do this or should you do that? The path to God is found in how we treat other people, because God is present in other people just like God is present in us. And when we recognize that other people are made in the image and likeness of God, just as we are made in the image and likeness of God, it gives us the power to treat them as such. Love is the answer. Love is the path to divine truth, and anything else is a distraction. I want to say thank you guys so much for being here. It is always a privilege to be able to do the awesome Saturday service. I hope that you guys got something good out of it. Susan says, when you teach, you learn more, and boy, let me tell you, preparing these sermons every week is always very educational for me. I have to dive into stuff that I think I know, or I have to dive into things that I know a little bit about on a surface level, and just kind of get into them deeper. Just this week, I get to research Henry VIII. I got to research a bit about Buddhism. I got to research a bit more about Islam, and just crack open some holy books that I hadn't cracked open in a while. To I'm like, wait a minute, I seem to recall this, that, or the other thing, and actually dive into this stuff and read about it again, which then makes my life better. So have a great night, Susan. Thanks so much for staying up for the awesome Saturday service. For all of my friends who are in my time zone, let's go have an amazing day. Susan already had her amazing day, and she's going to have another one tomorrow. Yeah, I want to say thank you guys so much for being here. Have a good night, Susan, and thanks so much, Tony and Shauna, for being here at the awesome Saturday service. It is wonderful to see you guys here today. I'll be back on Monday at 9 a.m. with another wake-up call. But until then, this is your up-to-the-moment reminder. I love you. I care about you. I think that you're amazing. I'm excited to see you every day when I am on the internet broadcasting, and I will be excited to hug your neck the next time I see you in person. So, love you, appreciate you, think that you're amazing, and talk to you soon. Aloha from paradise.